So European cities such as Paris, Amsterdam, Malmo, Zurich and Vienna have a legacy of both greater consistency and commitment in the delivery of truly affordable housing. Amsterdam, unlike London, has been able to maintain ownership of 88% of its land, which roughly equates to double that of London, estimated in 2011. This, along with a non-partisan municipal departments, allows them to control a low ground rent. The city then leases it to partners in an endless lease with yearly payments, thus taking the pressure of the capital land costs out of the equation. Social housing is still the largest housing sector in major cities like Amsterdam, 44%, Rotterdam, over 50%, and in Amsterdam's private rental market, 50,000 units, which is 12% of the dwellings, are rent controlled. The importance of social housing was reinforced by an announcement in 2017 of a new 40-40-20 housing mandate for Amsterdam, a municipal requirement for tenant mixes of 40% social housing, 40% mid-segment, don't ask me what that means, and 20% free sector commercial housing. Unlike the stigmas of poverty, welfare, resilience and otherness associated with public housing in the UK, Dutch social housing is a culturally acceptable way of living. And I think this is also sort of primarily because of, one of the problems is devolution of central to local government, the fact that boroughs are too big to be truly representative of the public and too small to be strategic. And it's interesting actually recently that Amsterdam went from 15 stadsdelen, which is a kind of borough type organisation, to 8, and Zurich has autonomy outside of the national kind of political system. Paris is a good example of how consistent funding, ambitious policy and simpler delivery mechanisms has produced high quality housing in the capital. France has benefited from decades of stability and monopoly by people such as, in terms of the Sociale, the Bailleur Sociale, which is a kind of registered landlord, through the generous natural funding and a preferential ability to buy land at discounted price to develop projects. The Bailleur Sociale, such as Paris Habitat, have become financially wealthy, which they put back into the system, with a deep knowledge in design and management of social housing. This monopoly has enabled a certain amount of flexibility, allowing them to reinvest in research, innovation and quality. The work of Lacatin and Vassal is a direct beneficiary of this in the work of transformation of housing estates and the application of research, and is an exemplar of Paris Habitat. Social housing in France also accommodates a broad demographic remit that includes housing families, artists, students, migrant workers and young people. Housing has a unique capacity to define urban form and a character of the city in its numerous districts and neighbourhoods. Europe has a long-established urban tradition. In France and Germany, it's not uncommon to find high numbers of families and older people living in central city locations in compact residential flats. The use of a greater variety of types and combinations create diverse, inclusive and successful family homes and neighbourhoods, rather than the low-density suburbs that we find in the UK's cities, a result of London's Public Health Act and the subsequent 2.5 million Bailleur homes built by 1910. So it's actually, for the UK, it's not only historical and political, but it's a morphological and typological issue. We can come to that in the debate. The pendulum swung the other way in post-war housing, but to the same effect, the creation of segregated monocultural housing estates in central city locations. There have been moments. Peabody Trust's Islington estate was revolutionary in its form for its rejection of the street pattern in favour of what Irina Davidovici notes as a continental urbanity, Hof rather than terrace, îlot rather than sprawl. The European urban tradition creates a more balanced distribution of housing, density and mix of uses with a more effective and diverse mobility system that is not necessarily dependent upon the street. It also takes the pressure off the high street to deliver the conflicting demands of social amenities and services and increasing congested transport system. This enables greater integration and the opportunities for employment and long-term value. Point 5 slides to go. Broader participation has had a role to play in the diversification of the procurement, design and delivery of housing across Europe. Close relationships with non-profit cooperatives has been integral to STAP Zurich's housing strategy and the delivery of affordable housing since the early 20th century. The city provides long-term renewable leases on city-owned land, including development rights, which enables them to maintain a level of control over the development of the city. In return, the cooperatives must meet a number of commitments, such as provision of low-cost rental housing and amenities for public use. They're also responsible for organising competitions for each project administered by the city, which is central to ensuring design quality and innovation in housing design. The cooperatives also often have to find innovative funding models in order to build, maintain and manage their projects. This means that the financial burden shared by the cooperatives and the city involves not only providing low-cost housing, but also maintaining it over the long term. So I think, it's interesting that Jacob showed 3 houses, one big, one middle, one small. And what we're increasingly seeing in Europe is we need about 20 houses of different sizes. And that's one of the problems, there's only 3 houses in your diagram. In places such as the Hunziker Areal development in Zurich by Duplex architects, the founding of the cooperative, Miras Wohnen, which is more than housing in German, involved the contribution of 55 Zurich cooperatives with the city retaining ownership of the land. The cooperatives were established to celebrate 100 years of collaboration between the cooperatives and the city. Its members not only include the residents, but also individuals and organisations within Switzerland who feel committed to non-profit housing. Individuals must buy a minimum of 2 500 Swiss franc shares, don't know what that is today, and organisations must invest 20,000 Swiss francs. Vienna also has a long history of government-driven innovation. Vienna's Wohnprojekt by Einszueins architects is run by a cooperative that is sociocratically organised, not a vote system, but where issues are discussed and openly debated. It is funded through a complex system of membership and asset pooling. This requires residents to commit to long-term investment engagement in the financial management of the building, as well as maintaining a 10% liquidity for maintenance. Ultimately, it keeps the cost of housing permanently low. What we're seeing in Europe in places like Germany, Switzerland, Sweden is a broader range of institutional investors whereby access to finance in the UK is limited and the support structure not in place. Consequently, Europe, we're seeing much more diversity in the market. Half of Germany's new homes are self and custom build, and in Zurich, between 2001 and 2003, I know it's old, but 23% of new housing was built by non-profit housing companies. Design quality. The ambition for high-quality housing design remains high throughout Europe. Although strict apartment sizes are maintained, rooms have sliding partitions that give added flexibility to configuration. And it was interesting Stephanie talking about the way in which, places are seen to be adaptable and how they can change things. What we're seeing in Europe is this idea of rooms that are of a self-similar size. Why do we have small rooms, big rooms, etc.? They become less flexible. So you have this kind of matrix. There's even a dentist's chair in the kitchen there. Health and safety will have a field day, but it's quite good after eating a pizza. At Hunziker Areal, there was also, generous corridors for storage, communal terraces and rooms. And the competition phase, they introduced a very ambitious brief where you had to deliver 20% extra internal space that we can use as commons, shared spaces for all residents. There is a diversity in design approaches, typological approach to apartment layouts and materials. Affordability is delivered through frugality and doing more with less. An ability for residents to rent homes that have been more limited cooking facilities and other basic finishes and fittings that can be adapted when they can afford it. If we were to tackle the crisis in affordability, diversifying lifestyles and family constructions, the need for health well-being, and the desire for access to a broader set of amenities, then a broader spectrum is required in order to meet the demands that we're asking of our housing today. Dwellings are therefore increasingly being understood as not as just housing provision, but as activity centres, places for social and business networking. Not only can our domestic environments be reconceived, but also our neighbourhoods. The commissioning of architects in Europe, this is about procurement, is often shorter, more focused and paid. Full stop. Reference portfolios of your work are handed over. A 2-page text, 900 characters. Understanding of the task is a statement, and that takes you through, if you are therefore shortlisted, to a second phase of 4 to 5 teams, which are decently paid for a 3-week competition. That sounds lovely, doesn't it? The Belgian government's 6-monthly framework open call encourages small, big, national and international practices to take part in far less onerous process and helped us to complete a 200-home social housing project where, and obviously Rory's dashed off. But, you know, lingering on a deck access is actually actively encouraged. And its form was based around the idea that we had to build on the existing foundations of three towers, because the rest of the ground is actually a Roman archaeological dig. And we had to move the tenants from the existing tower into the new building. So it's taken 10 years to build 200 homes and finished last month.
Dominic, I'm afraid you're at time. We're going to run out for Q&A.
Yeah, I know. Okay, bear with me. The involvement, I'm last, so I can go on forever. The involvement of the state delivers more. The involvement of the state delivers more design coherence and consistency of a development process. Hunziker Areal, the master planning process. I'm not going to talk about that. Sustainability is very high on the agenda. Across many of the European countries, there's a real drive for timber construction. In the Netherlands, a new policy of 25% of all construction to be in timber by 2025. In the New Amsterdam neighbourhood of Sociale, even towers of 25 to 30 stories are being progressing in timber. Sustainability and circularity accounts for 30% of the tendering selection criteria. I'm going to conclude. I've missed out something, but it's not important.
If you could conclude, that'd be great. Then we're going to have 10 minutes for Q&A.
Yeah, okay. It's clear that, I'm just trying to get rid of the Q&A. It is clear that there has been any requirement for local government to there hasn't been any requirement for local government to step in and deliver social affordable housing in Europe, as there's been stability and consistency, and in some cases, like Zurich, 100 years of social housing provision. This has encouraged a broader set of participants and stakeholders in the design, delivery, maintenance and management of housing, and a more simpler and direct delivery process. This has created a sector that has delivered a broader spectrum of housing, community building and ways of life that respond to our evolving patterns of friendship and neighbourliness. A commitment by European cities at the scale of the city and not the borough means that policy is non-partisan and consistent over long periods of time that helps deliver long-term value. The commitment to research, experimentation and quality of rented developments and how this can be instrumental in the transformation and integration of urban areas has moved the stigmatisation we suffer in the UK. That's it.